Sheev Palpatine is one of the greatest movie villains of all time, and the central antagonist of the Star Wars saga. His evil personification as Darth Sidious is well documented and appreciated, especially his zombie-like resurrection in the sequels. Yet, to be fair to the sequels, Sidious was always a one-dimensional evil villain, full of spite, venom and power. Yet it's Palpatine's journey to becoming Sidious, less through power but through manipulation and misdirection to secure power, that is less appreciated and explored, and it's this that truly makes him one of the greatest villains of all time. So in this video I will use a data visualization to show this long hard journey to power by outlining Palpatine's web of deceit across the prequel movies, The Phantom Menace to Attack of the Clones, and the conclusion in Revenge of the Sith. A complex and multifaceted web of deception that leads him to transform a democratic republic to an autocratically controlled empire. Yet, before we join Palpatine on weaving his web of deceit, we first need to appreciate the long hard journey he took to become Senator of Naboo in The Phantom Menace. And it's in the Legends book Darth Plagueis that we see this journey to becoming a senator beginning, when as a teenager on Naboo, Plagueis identifies Palpatine as being strong with the Force and convincing him to become his Sith apprentice. And in doing so, committing to the Sith Order by murdering his family to remove his interfering father, enduring years of hardship in training to become a Sith Force user, while simultaneously playing the role of an enemy within as a politician on Coruscant. All while Plagueis pulled the strings in the background with his financial influence in the investment bank Damask Holdings, with this influence resulting in Palpatine's rise through the ranks from a humble public servant to Senator of Naboo, allowing him to cultivate allies and dissent in the Trade Federation to destabilize the Republic, bringing us to the events of The Phantom Menace. And this beginning brings us to our visualization and Palpatine's cinematic web of deceit. Here I've charted each pivotal moment in the prequels where Palpatine uses manipulation and misdirection to influence events and other characters as a dot, and the continued red line as his journey to power, as he ensnares them in his web of deceit, all except one, which we'll get to in the video. So let's now join Palpatine in The Phantom Menace as he spins his web of deceit. His first interaction with another character as the Senator of Naboo comes late in the movie, just after the halfway point, having set the pieces on the chessboard as Darth Sidious, by attempting to get Padme to sign the treaty with the Trade Federation to create sympathy for his candidacy as Chancellor to replace Valorum. Yet Padme escaped with the Jedi and also escaped Maul on Tatooine, with him now reuniting with her face to face for the first time since hatching his plan and failing until this point. Here we see Palpatine deliver one of his best deceptive performances, saying, "It is a great gift to see you alive, Your Majesty." All this despite his coordination of the blockade of her planet and sending his apprentice to kidnap her to sign the treaty. He is also talking to her decoy Sabe, and one must think he knows this, having dealt with Padme many times as Senator of Naboo. Yet he doesn't show it and talks to Sabe as though she were Padme. Yet it's through Sabe he starts his manipulation of Padme to meet his quest for power. We then move to a monologue from Palpatine, not out of place in a Shakespearean play, where he talks about the Senate and the Republic being full of greedy, squabbling delegates, and the baseless accusations of corruption against Valorum, which he of course seeded in the Senate to bring him to this point, to push for the election of a new Supreme Chancellor by calling for a vote of no confidence in Valorum, rather than taking more time by submitting a plea to the courts, which, as he expected, Padme would not do while her people were under Federation control, and to which he responds with a knowing, longing look. Having secured an emergency meeting of the Senate to raise their concerns and remove the Trade Federation blockage, Palpatine opens the meeting with deliberately provocative language, talking of the oppression of the Trade Federation, which triggered a reaction of outrage from the Federation senator. Padme then attempts to give her speech but is interrupted by the Trade Federation senator, who demands a commission is sent to Naboo. Then Valorum is interrupted with advice from Massamada, who Palpatine had at this point formed an alliance with to topple Valorum. It's at this point the trap is set, as Palpatine whispers in Padme's ear that the bureaucrats are the true rulers, and like Mosca to Volpone and Wormtongue to King Theoden, he pours honey potion in the ear of his senator and triggers her to move for a vote of no confidence in Valorum. And with Valorum, we see another player caught in Palpatine's web, with the trap set and sprung. And now, in Palpatine's words, they will elect a new Chancellor, a strong Chancellor, who will not allow this tragedy to continue. After the vote of no confidence, Palpatine is nominated to replace Valorum. A surprise, to be sure, he says, though a surprise to everyone except him, as he knows Plagueis was lobbying on his behalf from the shadows. Yet this move will do what he originally wanted to achieve with Padme signing the treaty, to create sympathy to secure his nomination. Here we see Palpatine openly announcing his strategy, the one that failed in trying to get her to sign the treaty, yet will now succeed with the vote of no confidence, as he boldly announces, "I will be Chancellor." And there is something else in this exchange that is less appreciated. That as he smiles with glee at his nomination, he has finalised a plan to kill Plagueis, his mentor, the Sith that brought him to this point, but who no longer served a purpose now he was assured to be voted as Chancellor. And later that evening, he would murder Plagueis in his sleep. We don't see it on screen, but we should recognise this pivotal moment, that as he lays out his web of deceit, he will also strike and kill anyone no longer useful to him. This brings us to the end of the Battle of Naboo, and with it Palpatine's election as Chancellor. Likely not as he envisaged, losing Maul as his apprentice, but success all the same. It's here that Palpatine thanks Obi-Wan for his bravery, yet interestingly Obi-Wan doesn't react except to stare at him. And of course he congratulates Anakin and says he will watch his career with great interest, before then congratulating Padme on her boldness and victory. It is at this point Padme is fully ensnared in his web and of little use to him, with Obi-Wan and Anakin now the prey in his sights. And at the conclusion of The Phantom Menace, we see Palpatine's manipulation without even opening his mouth, as he watches Qui-Gon's funeral while Yoda and Mace Windu openly discuss if the Master or the apprentice was killed, all the while the Master looked on in plain sight. So, in this first chapter of Palpatine's web, we see a near singular focus on Padme to achieve his objective, to become Supreme Chancellor. Yet with Anakin, Obi-Wan, Mace and Yoda also now in his sights, he needs to prepare the next chapter of his web and achieve the transformation of the Republic to the Empire. And in this second chapter of Attack of the Clones, we now fast forward to a growing movement of more star systems joining the Separatists, triggered by the Trade Federation's blockade. Here we see Palpatine holding court with the Jedi Council, suggesting a need for an army to quell the Separatist movement. Mace warns him that the Jedi are keepers of the peace, not soldiers. It's at this point Palpatine appears to test the Jedi, to understand if they have any knowledge of his plans by asking the most powerful Jedi, Yoda, if he thinks it will come to war, to which Yoda replies that the dark side clouds everything. It's in this moment we see Palpatine toying with the Jedi, likely laughing inside at their lack of awareness. Yet we also see a moment where Mace is troubled by the discussion, that he knows something is wrong, but he just can't understand why. Yoda then tells Padme she remains in danger after her attempted assassination, of course orchestrated by Palpatine, likely to avoid her from voting against his intended motion to create an army of the Republic. Palpatine then looks to the horizon as he makes an innocent suggestion for her safety, that perhaps an old friend, Master Kenobi, could be assigned as her protection, as he tells her that the thought of losing you is unbearable. Here he sets the stage to bring Anakin into his orbit, having watched him from afar and possibly sensing his attachment to her. If he creates attachment, he creates a fear of loss, which leads to anger and hate on the path to the dark side. This stage setting brings us to the first on-screen Palpatine and Anakin as an adult, where Palpatine reflects that finally they have given him an assignment and his patience has paid off, before he then slyly shifts to telling Anakin to trust your feelings, that you will be invincible, even more powerful than Master Yoda. The use of the words finally and paid off not only suggests Palpatine has been in dialogue with Anakin for some time, as Plagueis was with him, but it also signals an appeal to Anakin's arrogance and the start of his manipulation to be drawn to the dark side. And in this scene, we also see an interesting physical shift to his alter ego of Darth Sidious, as now he walks with his hands in front of his robes, rather than by his side as he did in The Phantom Menace. Next, Obi-Wan provides a report on Geonosis about the creation of a clone army on behalf of the Republic. Masameda suggests the Senate votes to give Palpatine emergency powers to create a clone army. And Palpatine, giving another masterful stage performance, looks reluctant to embrace this suggestion, asking what senator would propose this. To which Masamada asks, if only Senator Amidala were here, and Palpatine innocently agrees with a response. This moment, of course, signals the start of Jar Jar's manipulation to making a proposal on Padmé's behalf to grant emergency powers to the Chancellor, which in turn led to him in a tongue-in-cheek meme being proclaimed a Sith by the fandom. Yet it was his naivety and Palpatine's manipulation that led to it. At this moment, the Senate embraces the proposal, wanting peace and security over chaos, yet not realizing what they've given up in terms of the freedom of their citizens. With Palpatine announcing that it is with great reluctance that I have agreed to this calling. I love democracy, I love the Republic, and I will give back this power with my first act to create a grand army of the Republic. These were of course all lies in plain sight, with the exception of creating the army. At this point, Palpatine is Emperor in all but name, and Yoda senses the dark side but cannot do anything about it because he cannot identify the source directly in front of him. This represents the impotence of the Jedi, that they are mere observers that don't even know they are being manipulated into their destruction. And while Senator Organa looks on with remorse and fear, he too is part of the Senate that approved the creation of this army and will oversee its use. Which brings us to our concluding chapter in Revenge of the Sith. With his election as Supreme Chancellor and an army behind him, now all Palpatine needs to do is eliminate the Jedi to secure unopposed power once and for all. And to do this, he needs an enforcer. He needs an apprentice. He needs Anakin. And it's with this objective in mind he sets a stage for a performance from his current apprentice Dooku and a test for his would-be apprentice in Anakin. Having told Dooku to duel Anakin and test his strength, Palpatine had little to lose. Either Dooku would kill him or seduce him to the dark side, or Anakin would kill Dooku and take his place. And it's here we see the first signs of the mask slipping, of Palpatine revealing his true nature as Sidious, jeering from the sidelines, as he smiles in the background as Anakin overpowers Dooku, then telling him to kill Dooku. And it's in this instruction we see a deliberate attempt to draw Anakin to the dark side, telling him he wanted revenge like he did when he killed the Sand People after they killed his mother. After this, Palpatine again removes his mask of a senator, showing the selfishness of a Sith, telling Anakin to leave Obi-Wan on the ship, to which Anakin refuses, proving there is still good in him that Palpatine needs to remove. After Anakin saves Palpatine, Mace asks if he's alright. And like Yoda, he is blind to Palpatine's true nature, under his spell as the senator in need of saving. Here he follows his every word about the danger of Grievous now being the leader of the Separatist army, and does not question Palpatine's assertion that the army of the Republic will continue to be required. And having influenced his second step to the dark side by goading Anakin to kill Dooku, Palpatine now appeals to his arrogance and need of a father figure, with Obi-Wan unable to play that role. As he calls him son and says he needs his help. The use of the word son is interesting, with the confirmation in the Vader comics that Palpatine manipulated the midichlorians inside Shmi, his mother's womb, which meant that, from a certain point of view, he was Anakin's father. From this manipulation in offering himself as a father figure, Palpatine then moves to appeal to Anakin's arrogance by appointing him as the Republic's representative on the Jedi Council. And here we see Anakin's selfishness grow, as his reaction is that he will become a master. Here he focuses less on his responsibility to be on the council and more on his personal achievement of being given the rank of master, which Palpatine of course realizes the council will not grant, creating anger within him and continuing his path to the dark side. Yet it's after this moment that Palpatine experiences one of his few failures at manipulation, where Obi-Wan appeals to Anakin for caution in his relationship with Palpatine, saying that something is up. Here we see an underappreciated quality in Obi-Wan, where he realizes something is wrong with Palpatine, like he sensed an elusive evil at the beginning of The Phantom Menace, and how he glared at Palpatine when congratulated on defeating Maul at the end. So in this respect, Obi-Wan appears to be the only character outwardly questioning Palpatine and sensing the evil inside him, which is why he's not quite ensnared in his web, yet even sensing something is off, Obi-Wan was unable to deduce the wider plan. And back to Anakin, like Padme in The Phantom Menace, Palpatine builds his manipulation with his most significant break of cover yet, telling him the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise. The risk being that he called it a Sith legend despite the events he described only happening a decade ago, meaning the apprentice that killed Plagueis was the only one who likely could tell the story. Yet Palpatine tells this story to reveal to Anakin the power of the dark side to save people from death, knowing full well that Anakin had the nightmares of Padme's death in childbirth, having already fueled his anger with the instruction to kill Dooku and the promise of being a master declined by the Jedi Order. Palpatine now stokes Anakin's fears at losing Padme and implies the only way he can save her is by turning to the dark side. Which brings us to the crescendo of Palpatine's manipulation of Anakin in his office, where he talks of knowing the subtleties of the Force and that he needs to embrace a larger view. When Anakin realizes Palpatine is Sidious and draws his saber, Palpatine doesn't even flinch. In full control of the dialogue, again breaking cover by telling him he can feel his anger and it gives him focus, yet also turning back to the role of caring father figure, saying he can save Anakin's wife from certain death. The use of the word wife clearly surprises Anakin. He has confirmed he knows about Padme, knows about his visions of her death, and knows how to save her. Yet to his credit, Anakin reports the revelation he is Sidious to Mace Windu, though as we know, he still succumbs to his fear of losing Palpatine and with it the chance to save Padme. And it's here we get to Palpatine's wider reveal as Darth Sidious to the Jedi. As Mace and the Jedi attempt to arrest him for the Senate to decide his fate, Palpatine proclaims, "I am the Senate." And shortly after he draws his saber, emitting a force scream that confuses the Jedi and allows him to make quick work of them, all except Mace, who likely can see through the scream, having come close to the dark side himself with his own aggressive Vapad saber form. Yet the manipulation that follows this is when Anakin arrives and Palpatine is at Mace's mercy, as he accuses the Jedi of trying to take over the Senate. Yet this is not what drove Anakin to cut off Mace's arm and save Palpatine, which was instead of course his fear of losing Padme, a fear Palpatine masterfully stoked inside him, and a fear which ultimately saved him from Mace's blade. Having secured his apprentice and executed Order 66, Palpatine's victory is complete, and with it the need for playing the role of Chancellor is over. Palpatine is Sidious, and Sidious is Palpatine. The path to power is now complete, and as Padme says, the Senate is now manipulated to cheer him in his achievement with thunderous applause. But he's not finished there, and after Anakin fell to Obi-Wan and Padme dies, he again sees an opportunity for manipulation, one in encasing his apprentice in an unwieldy metal suit, constraining his agility and power, and another in his manipulation encasing his mind in the guilt of killing his wife, the only person he ever truly loved, and in doing so creating his slave and an enforcer who would or could not challenge his power, which of course remained unchallenged until the emergence of Anakin's son redeeming his father, and Anakin in the end bringing balance back to the Force. Yet despite this downfall, in Palpatine's web of deceit we see true evil, and one of the greatest villains of all time, one that took the long and hard path to power through cunning manipulation and misdirection, not only acting as the antagonist of the Star Wars saga, but also as an allegory of the danger of unchecked democracy and power. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and please check out my other Star Wars analysis videos. Thanks again for watching, and remember, in the way of data and observation, we can save Star Wars and entertainment.